Police Department. May I help you?
I killed 2 young people at Blue Rock Springs. They were inside a white Corvair, and I also killed those 2 last year.
One of the most mysterious and unsolved cases in American history. In the late 1960s, a series of brutal murders shook California. But the killer was far more than just a typical criminal. After taking lives, he would send letters to the police, cryptic messages to newspapers, and openly taunt the media. He became known by the name he gave himself,
Zodiac.
The Zodiac Killer admitted to murdering 5 people, but claimed he had killed 37. What made him stand out from other serial killers wasn't just the murders. It was the letters he sent, the complex ciphers, and the constant taunting. Police, detectives, amateur codebreakers, and journalists, they all spent decades trying to uncover his identity. But the Zodiac was never caught. This video will follow the trail of the Zodiac Killer. Every attack, every letter, every cipher, and every suspect. All of it will be examined in detail, in chronological order, leaving no room for doubt. And in the end, we'll try to answer the big question: who was the Zodiac, really? And why was he never caught? December 23, 1968. Just a few days before Christmas break, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen went out for a drive to spend some time together. They were near Lake Herman Road, just outside the city of Vallejo, California. At around 10:15 p.m., another car pulled up next to where the couple had parked. Witnesses later reported seeing a white car in the area. Faraday and Jensen were suddenly attacked. Betty Lou tried to run from the car, but was shot in the back and died at the scene. David Faraday was found next to the vehicle. Shot in the head, the bullet killed him almost instantly. The motive behind the murders was unclear. There were no signs of robbery, sexual assault, or personal revenge. The attack was methodical, silent, and carried out with chilling precision. The police launched an investigation, but there was very little evidence to go on. No witnesses, no fingerprints, no footprints, not even a mark from the gun's grip. The weapon used was a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. It was different from the firearms the Zodiac would later use, but the attack already showed signs of the same calculated mind. At first, it seemed like a simple double murder. But in reality, it was only the first act in the Zodiac's dark and twisted game. It was July 4, 1969. After the Independence Day celebrations, 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael Mageau drove to Blue Rock Springs Park. It was already past midnight. Around 12:10 a.m., another car pulled into the parking lot. It stayed for a moment, then drove off, only to return a few minutes later. A man stepped out of the car, holding a flashlight and a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He shined the light directly into Mageau's eye. Then, without saying a word, opened fire. Darlene Ferrin was shot 9 times and died at the scene. Michael Mageau was hit 4 times, but miraculously survived. Despite his injuries, he managed to give a statement to the police at the hospital. About 40 minutes after the attack, at 12:40 a.m., a strange call came into the Vallejo Police Department. The man on the line spoke in a flat, emotionless voice.
I killed 2 kids at Blue Rock Springs. They were in a white Corvair. and I also killed those 2 last year.
The call had been made from a phone booth at a gas station on Springs Road. A fingerprint was found, but there was no matching record. This confession showed that the same person who had claimed responsibility for the Lake Herman Road murders 6 months earlier was now back. The killer wasn't just murdering anymore, he was playing a game. And he would be the one writing the rules. Exactly 1 month after the Blue Rock Springs attack on August 1st, 1,969 three newspapers received nearly identical letters: the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Examiner, and the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside each envelope was a chilling message, a complex 408-symbol cipher, disturbing details about the recent attacks, and an eerie threat that would mark the beginning of a terrifying game with the media and the police.
Try to crack this code and figure out who I am, the letters warned. And if you don't publish it, I will continue killing all weekend long.
The letters were taken seriously. The killer revealed details that only the police could have known. And for the first time, he signed off with a name that would haunt California for years to come: Zodiac. 1 week later, on August 7th, a second letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner. This time, it was short and chillingly direct.
Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking.
At this point, the killer had proven he was more than just a murderer. He was a psychological manipulator, someone who craved control and sought to communicate with the public on his own twisted terms. The ciphers had baffled the police. But then, something unexpected happened. A high school teacher named Donald Hardin, along with his wife, Betty, managed to crack the 408-character cipher in just a matter of days. The decoded message began with a chilling line.
Killing people is so much fun. It's more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all.
But one detail stood out. The Zodiac had claimed he hid his name within the cipher, yet the Hardins couldn't find it. Either the killer was lying, or his true identity was buried deeper than anyone could see. And so, the Zodiac wasn't just targeting bodies anymore. He was targeting minds. To him, this was a game. The victims, the detectives, the journalists, and even the public. They were all players now. September 27, 1969. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were spending a quiet afternoon by the shores of Lake Berryessa. But that calm was about to be shattered forever. Around 6:00 p.m. Aim, dressed in black, approached them. On his head, he wore a hood marked with a white crosshair symbol inside a circle. The same symbol was printed on the front of a black bib-like garment. And in his hand, he held a knife. The man claimed he was an escaped convict. He said he needed a car and that he was going to steal theirs. Then, one by one, he tied them up with plastic cords. Cecilia first, then Brian. Then, without warning, the Zodiac pulled out a large knife from his pocket and began stabbing. First Cecilia, then Brian, over and over again. In total, Cecilia Shepard was stabbed 10 times. Brian Hartnell, 6 times. After the attack, the killer walked over to Brian's car and, using a black marker, wrote a chilling message on the door:
Vallejo.
12/2068, 7/4/69. September 27, 69, 6:30 p.m. By knife. Once again, the Zodiac reported his own crime. From a phone booth near the Napa area, he called the police to confess the attack. The phone was later found still off the hook, silently hanging in the aftermath. Miraculously, Brian Hartnell survived, and the detailed statement he gave to police became a crucial key in understanding the Zodiac's tactics and behavior. Later, In his statement to the police, Brian Hartnell described the attacker as composed, cold-blooded, and meticulously prepared. Tragically, Cecilia Shepard succumbed to her injuries 2 days later. The Zodiac's attacks were becoming more calculated, more symbolic, and far more terrifying. Detective Ken Narlow, who had been assigned to the case from the Napa Police Department, retired in 1987. Without ever solving the mystery he had spent years chasing. October 11th, 1969. In San Francisco's Union Square district, 29-year-old taxi driver Paul Stein was behind the wheel, waiting to pick up a fare. He had no idea it would be the last ride of his life. Stein picked up a passenger at 345 Hyde Street and headed toward the intersection of Washington and Cherry Streets in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. According to records, the destination had been entered on the taxi dispatch form, but it was a false call. When the ride came to an end, the passenger pulled out a gun and fired a single shot at close range to Paul Stein's head. The taxi driver was killed instantly, but this attack was unlike the others. This time, the Zodiac stole personal items from his victim. And most shocking of all, he cut away a piece of Paul Stein's blood-stained shirt and took it with him. After committing the murder, the killer calmly walked through the quiet, upscale neighborhood of Presidio Heights. But the most striking detail was this: 3 young witnesses, watching from a second-story window, saw the moment of the attack and watched the Zodiac step out of the cab. The children immediately called the police. Officers arrived at the scene within minutes, but due to a critical miscommunication, the radio dispatch described the suspect as African American. In reality, based on the children's account, the killer was a white male. That mistake paved the way for one of the most infamous escapes in criminal history. It's believed the Zodiac walked right past the police patrol car and vanished into the night. A few days after the murder, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. In it, the Zodiac claimed responsibility for killing Paul Stein, and he included proof: a blood-stained piece of Stein's shirt cut directly from the body. The murder sent a wave of panic through the public. The Zodiac was no longer just targeting couples. He had proven he could kill anyone, anywhere, at any time. The San Francisco police went on high alert, launching a citywide manhunt. But despite their efforts, the Zodiac had once again vanished, without a trace. Arthur Leigh Allen was one of the most prominent suspects ever linked to the Zodiac. He possessed numerous traits that aligned closely with the elusive killer. At the time, Allen was known to wear a wristwatch branded Zodiac. He also lived in close proximity to the site of the Lake Berryessa attack. Despite these suspicious connections, DNA tests and handwriting analyses yielded no conclusive evidence. The only tangible clue was his recurring association with the Zodiac case in the past. But unfortunately, that alone was never enough to warrant his arrest. Another key suspect was Lawrence Kane. Kane bore a striking resemblance to the composite sketch of the Zodiac, and he also had a documented history of violence. His criminal background mirrored the type of offenses committed during the Zodiac killings in the region. Much like the killer, Kane was known to drink heavily and had been involved in multiple violent incidents. However, the case against him relied solely on circumstantial evidence. There was never any concrete proof directly linking him to the Zodiac crimes. In 2021, a group of independent investigators proposed that Gary Francis Post could be the true identity of the Zodiac. Post had a criminal background that matched the killer's taunting and erratic behavior, and he was even alleged to be connected to some of the Zodiac's cryptic messages. However, these claims were never officially confirmed by law enforcement, and no definitive evidence ever emerged to tie Post conclusively to the crimes. To this day, the true identity of the Zodiac remains unproven. Kathleen Johns was traveling with her baby when a man flagged her down on a remote highway. He claimed her car had a flat tire and offered to help. What followed was a terrifying encounter. According to Johns, the man tampered with her vehicle and at some point attempted to steal it. Sensing danger, she fled on foot with her child. The man pursued them, but Kathleen managed to reach a police station and escape unharmed. This incident is the only known attack linked to the Zodiac in which the victim survived. Though never definitively connected to the killer, the event bore a chilling resemblance to his methods and has since been regarded as a possible Zodiac assault. Donna Lass was a young nurse who vanished one night on her way to work. Weeks later, the Zodiac sent a cryptic postcard suggesting a link to her disappearance. Despite this eerie communication, no direct evidence has ever confirmed that Donna's case was connected to the Zodiac killings. Still, subtle clues embedded in the killer's ciphers have led many to believe that her disappearance may have been yet another of his unsolved crimes. Cherie Jo Bates was attacked and strangled near Riverside City College. The brutal killing has long fueled speculation that it may have been one of the Zodiac's earliest murders. In the aftermath, rumors spread of a cryptic message being sent possibly from the killer himself. Yet, to this day, no conclusive evidence has tied the Zodiac directly to the crime. Still, the nature of the attack, calculated, personal, and cruel, closely mirrors the methods seen in his later murders. For that reason, many continue to list Cherie Jo Bates as one of the Zodiac's possible victims. If you want to follow the rest of the series, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. More unsolved mysteries are on the way. Stay tuned.